I'm going to talk more about legal stuff, and so I hope I can be equally engaging while I talk about cases and laws and other things. So I'm Leslie Gable-Brett. I'm the Director of Education Public Affairs at Lambda Legal, and I realized early on that some people might not be familiar with Lambda Legal, so the 2-second thumbnail on that is that we are actually the oldest and largest LGBT legal rights organization in the country, now 36 years old, based here in New York City with 4 regional offices around the country. And one of our priority areas is healthcare fairness, and it's a relatively new conception for us, not that we haven't been doing healthcare work for a long time, but we just sort of named it and shaped it, and we're actually working with Rebecca and other people on some projects. So I want to do a couple things with the time I'm going to have. One is to talk a little bit more about the intersection of the issues between reproductive justice and LGBT liberation. And then to talk specifically about some of the issues that we address at Lambda Legal and some of the particular cases that have illustrated those issues and in some cases won some rights for the community, and then to pitch our LGBT healthcare fairness survey. So I'm pitching it now, and then I'll pitch it again. We're working with the coalition and other groups to get people to come online and take a survey about their experiences in the healthcare system so that we can document some examples if that's what we learn of discrimination or of problems of access. And of course we'll write a report and we'll do some education with it. So we're in a 4-week period where we're collecting those responses. So I have little cards to hand out, and I hope to remember to pitch it again before I'm done. Okay, so a little bit more on common ground, and again, I'm going to sort of be dating myself as a sort of old feminist, and I'm proud. That's okay. There's a couple other old feminists in the room. Not old, senior, experienced, mature. So just following the sort of causes in common discussion, and then to get to the specific legal matters. So why are these issues so closely connected? And I'm hoping that a lot of what I'm saying is in that paper, which I read once, but I don't know. So one thing is that both the reproductive freedom movement and the LGBT liberation movement are at their cores about the freedom to express our sexuality. I think that's the obvious and most basic way in which there's commonality. Also, of course, there's the legal roots, which are completely intertwined. And again, I don't know, some of you know big legal cases or legal theories, and some maybe not as much. But from Griswold, which was one of the key privacy decisions in the reproductive rights movement, to Roe, to Lawrence, which is the most important so far legal case in the LGBT legal rights movement, is a direct line of legal reasoning and Supreme Court decisions. And I think most people here probably know Griswold and Roe, and if you're not as familiar, Lawrence v. Texas was the case that we won in 2003 before the U.S. Supreme Court, so it was just 6 years ago, which finally overturned, struck down all the remaining sodomy laws, which criminalized sexual contact between people of the same sex, and each of the state laws were a little bit different in how they described it and what the law actually said. But the case came out of Texas, where 2 men were arrested for having consensual sex in one of the man's apartments, and that was against the law in Texas. And at the time that Lawrence was won, there were still 13 states remaining where you could be arrested just for having consensual sex with somebody of the same sex. And under the same theory about the constitutional protection for adults to be able to make private choices about their sexuality, coming straight out of the Griswold and Roe decisions, Lawrence was decided. And now Lawrence is being used in some of the marriage equality victories around the country, because there's a continuing line about individual freedom to make private choices about who you love, how you love, and whether and when to have a family. And we're not winning all those cases, but we're winning some, and that's pretty exciting. And we're excited about the win we just had in Iowa, which was a unanimous Supreme Court decision on marriage equality. Okay, back to the causes in common. So another thing that Terry made reference to is we have the same enemies. Big time we have the same enemies. The Alliance Defense Fund, for example, is one of our common enemies. They sue or attack LGBT rights and reproductive rights all the time. So it's interesting about why we have the same enemies, and then that's why I'm going to get to the sort of being an old feminist for a moment. Because both the reproductive rights movement and the LGBT rights movement are about challenging and breaking apart a model of heterosexuality and male control of family formation. kind of I always think the Alliance Defense Fund is, you know, the Empire Strikes Back. we really have made a huge progress. There's a lot of work to be done in both our movements and in our collective movements. But in the last 30 years, really, we've made enormous progress on LGBT rights and on reproductive rights. And that has challenged, as it should, this old model. And, you know, I know that there's a lot of teasing about the jargon from the old feminist movement, but it's really capitalist patriarchy. That's really the best name for it. That thing that we've challenged and that we've taken apart. It has to do with division of labor and economics and family formation and gender roles and all sorts of things that are packaged together. And by being free to choose our sexual orientation and our gender identity and our sexual expression and whether and when to have children, we are all challenging that model for the individual freedom and the community freedom that we all seek. So that's why we have the same enemies. They might not say it that way, but that's what they're defending, and that's why they fight us. Okay, so that's a little bit about sort of intersectionality of our work and our movements. So what are the LGBT health issues that I'm going to talk about that have come up as legal matters? And there are a few. One is just sort of the basic discrimination based on prejudice, that is healthcare providers treating us badly, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The big one that I want to talk the most about is religious refusals, and that is a huge issue in both of our movements. And we had a case in California where we had a good victory at the California Supreme Court, and I brought a handout about that. That's what I'm going to talk some about. The third is all the issues that Terry was just talking about, family formation and our access to various forms of fertility treatments and assisted reproductive technologies, and also adoption. We have many, many cases around the country about the rights of lesbian and gay adults to adopt. Hospital mergers, which is really sort of crosses over into this religious refusal issue, and a number of people associated with NARAL and other groups have worked as Lambda Legal on a big national advisory board about hospital mergers and what that means for healthcare. And then transgender healthcare, which is a huge topic which I won't be able to do justice to in my 20 minutes here, but is also an area of enormous challenges and potential discrimination. So let me talk about the religious refusals one first with my handout and tell you about the Benitez case. Sure, that